Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Miles Culture Plate. I am your host, Kevin Miles. It is Saturday, September 17th, 2022. And 235 years ago today, very important words were written down. You know, in past years, on September 17th, I took to the streets of a major city in the Midwest and handed out copies of the United States Constitution because I felt if you could just get a few normies to read the document and to learn what the role of government is and what the role of government is not, then perhaps we could make some headway. It's been quite a while since I've partaken in some of those kind of efforts because for the most part, I didn't have as much hope. And that's what I'm going to dedicate the stream today to is the concept of hope. Because I stopped caring whether or not people cared. That's part of the reason I fell into a hobby of collecting comic books. Because I realized I was getting too deep into the madness of fighting a political battle, an uphill battle. And I quickly realized that a lot of my allies weren't exactly allies. They were people who saw certain political movements as a stepping stone or a path towards some sort of community notoriety, which is fine. You know, I guess you could accuse me of doing the same thing with this YouTube channel here. But that's not it. That's not what turned me off. What turned me off is the other people who were involved played into that to some degree. And they wanted to be followers and not leaders. And once we started achieving some level of success, they went back to sleep or they joined a different political movement and kind of lost the values of what the United States Constitution really says. But here we are. Here we are several years later. Excuse me. Guess I should use my cough button. Okay. Here we are several years later, and we have a certain segment of the population that may not understand the Constitution. They may not understand the stakes involved, but there's a certain sense of populism happening. You know, people are waking up to some degree to the financial realities, to the tyrannical realities of an insanely large, overabundant government. And for the most part, people are learning that the government and media are going to lie. They're going to spread propaganda. They're going to utilize big tech to censor people and to promote their own narratives. Even the people on the far left who tend to be a little more authoritarian nowadays, who tend to be a little more let's tear down all the systems kind of mentality nowadays, even they know deep down that our media, our social media, and our government are being used for narrative purposes and not necessarily as an avenue of securing freedom and spreading prosperity. So, yeah, it is September 17th, Constitution Day, and I feel that today is an extremely important holiday, one that gets overlooked. You know, I kind of go on a rant usually around July 4th every year because we have commercialized the holiday. You say what you want about Christmas and Easter and Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny versus Jesus Christ and the secularism that has seeped into those holidays and people forgetting what the nature of those holidays are. But Independence Day is an extremely, extremely important holiday to reconcile what the true nature of that holiday is supposed to be about. And instead it's beer, hot dogs, and cheap Chinese explosives. And that's why when you turn on your television at the end of June and every other commercial is a 4th of July sale or a 4th of July this or a 4th of July that, they never use the title Independence Day. They always say 4th of July. And again, I'm not going to get into hating on people, your average person, for calling it the 4th of July. But I implore you folks, call it Independence Day. As important as Independence Day is, I think that today, September 17th, is just as important. We want to celebrate tearing down a tyrannical government. I think we also need to give credit for building a system of government that's based on liberty, that's based on republic values, that's based on checks, balances, and the ability to amend and change government when we realize an aspect of it is not working. Say what you will about the Founding Fathers, say what you will about them being slave owners, about it being 230 to 40 years ago. You know, say whatever you want. But the idea that they had checks and balances and an amendment process is something you don't get in other nations. It's not something you get when you're ruled by a king. It's not something you get when you are ruled by a dictator. So, do I want to dedicate the idea of hope to a piece of paper? No, because it is just a piece of paper. But so is War and Peace, was written on a piece of paper. So are so many classic documents and classic novels. You know, it's just words on paper. But what they mean to your heart, your soul, to your future, how much stake you put into what's in the document. I have no faith at all that the 430 whatever critters in Washington, D.C. give any rat's ass to what that document says. I don't think they care. I don't think the 12 justices on the Supreme Court fully care. There are some that seem to at least understand a great deal of the Constitution. And there are some Supreme Court justices who don't seem to understand a single word of it. Sotomayor. Sorry. But ultimately, it's up to us. It's up to you. It's up to me to determine what that document means for us. And granted, Article 2, Section whatever, we're not the President of the United States. We're not a congressman. So all the little details and rules really don't matter to us on a day-to-day basis. But understanding why those are there and why our government should be restricted and why the three branches of government have very specific detailed roles that are laid out in the United States Constitution. To understand all those things is to be an educated person. So, what does it mean to you? What does the Constitution of the United States mean to you? Leave a comment below. Let me know. So, the Constitution has been amended 27 times. 27 changes that have needed to be made to our constitutional form of government, to our republic. Some have been popular, some have been unpopular. Prohibition had to be instituted and then reversed. There's not a perfect system. There's not a perfect populace. There's not a perfect body of representation. Government is imperfect because it's inherently a government of imperfect men and women. And we're all imperfect. We put our support behind politicians with the understanding that they know better, that they've done more research, that the things that affect us as individuals on a day-to-day basis, or us as a community on a day-to-day basis, that our politicians can see the things we see and understand the things we understand. And that's not the form of government we were intended to have. On the one hand, the hope was that the average person like you or I would be the type of people that would have a call to perform a duty and run for office and get elected, and that the smartest of us would ascend and win those elections. But at the same time, over 235 years, that's not generally who has been elected. It's been those who have been popular, who have been pretty, who have been handsome, who have had catchy slogans and catchphrases. You know, they say you vote for the guy you would have a beer with. And maybe the guy you would have a beer with would be the smartest, most capable, and most noble. See, that's the other thing, is they're smart, and then there's those who would put the country first. Doing the smart thing isn't always doing the most noble, the most moral thing. And I'm not talking about legislating morality. That's a whole separate conversation. I'm talking about people who are statesmen. So, as I've said all that, and as we are now, 10 minutes into this, 15 minutes into this stream, I'm going to read the preamble to the Constitution. Now, big shout out to everyone out there who grew up in the 70s and 80s. I know there are a certain number of people out there in the audience, or, older folks who took a civics class or took certain types of social studies classes in junior high or freshman year of high school, or took a United States history class. And a lot of those civics and history classes, they would make you memorize and learn the preamble to the United States Constitution. And so if you were one of those people who were forced by public education system to recite the preamble of the United States Constitution, leave a comment down in the, leave a comment either in the chat or down below, and just let me know, hey, yeah, we did that in school. Just kind of curious how many people here were forced to learn the preamble to the U.S. Constitution in their secondary education. One other thing I'd like to point out, and of course my vape's not working, is I don't know how many people out there, big shout out to ABC Networks back in the 70s and early 80s had the Schoolhouse Rock. And if you can find it on YouTube, they did a whole song that was about the preamble to the U.S. Constitution. And I got to give props. You know, the preamble isn't exactly poetry, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't exactly rhyme, but yet they were able to make a rhyme out of a song, and it's quite interesting. You know, I used to play that song on repeat back in my activist days. So yeah, you know, go ahead, look up Schoolhouse Rock. And if you remember the Schoolhouse Rock preamble song from your childhood, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know. Hey, you know, I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons and that would come on and I'd sing along or whatever. You know, Schoolhouse Rock, that's all, what do you call it? You know, copyrighted material, and, you know, I'd play it right now. I'd play that song. I'd probably play it twice right now if I didn't think my channel would get, if I didn't think it'd get copyright claimed. But it definitely would. It's all owned by Disney now, I think, because it was ABC before, and I'm sure Disney owns it now. So yeah, preamble song. So the preamble to the United States Constitution. So if you were to go right now to Washington, D.C., and look at the physical copies of the Constitution of the United States, It starts out by saying, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." There's one little phrase inside that very long run-on sentence that I want to point out to you folks. A more perfect union. And I rant a lot about that phrase, about that clause. More perfect union. Nobody's claiming the United States is perfect. However, you look at all the forms of government that have ever happened in the United States, be it other republics or monarchies or tribal governments, the idea of a representative republic or a representative democracy in which, you have a certain size of a population and you elect representatives based on that, and that person is supposed to represent smaller communities within the bigger body of government, was genius. And if our government had remained limited and our U.S. Congress had remained proportional to the population, it probably would have lasted a lot longer. I mean, I'm saying that as if it has ended. It hasn't. We still have a chance to change things. But as of right now, one of the big problems I have with the amendment process is that we've amended it and we've allowed those two things to take root in our form of government. So, I think it's an important lesson that we learn today to not take the United States Constitution for granted, to not take our freedoms for granted, because at a time when the country we rebelled from has just installed a new monarch, has just handed down their form of, and don't give me the royal family has no power in Great Britain. That is a fucking lie. It is a lie every day and twice on Sunday. The royal family does have power, and I'm not going to get into that debate right now. Leave a comment below if you want to have that debate. We can have that debate, but the royal family still does have power, in my opinion. And so when they're installing a new monarch, it's important that we remember why we don't have monarchs here. And so 235 years, we've been able to keep a representative form of democracy called a republic without monarchs. So, having said that, government's involvement in media and big tech censorship, I'm going to go ahead and turn the corner here into a different topic, but closely related. The United States government has, it come out about a month ago that the FBI had came to Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and warned them that there would be disinformation coming down the pipeline before the 2020 election. And so therefore, big tech took steps to censor anyone that was promoting the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. This is government getting directly involved in censorship. But what about big tech? How much freedom does big tech have to just do whatever the hell they want? How much freedom does big tech have to just willy-nilly censor anybody that it wants to censor on its platform? You know, Citizens United was a really unpopular Supreme Court case that essentially said corporations are made up of people, and therefore corporations have a First Amendment right to spend their money how they wish on the speech they want to spend their money on. And back the speech that they want to back. And, you know, there have been a lot of debate over the last few years about Section 230, and I'm firmly on the side that says it needs to be revisited, not done away with, but it needs to be revisited to make certain platforms of a certain size common carriers, so that they are not they're not both acting as a carrier or a platform, but yet also editorializing the things that are on their platform. I think you are responsible to some degree. You should have the ability to censor some things, but I think once you're as large, I think once you have embedded yourself, like Facebook has, into so many other aspects of the U.S. business market, I think you have a responsibility to, be like a phone company or like a utility company. You're a utility. You are people's access to the world. Social media has become such an important aspect of our daily culture. And I wouldn't say this about your average little forum. You don't have a guaranteed right. You don't have a necessity to get on like a Batman forum. You don't have a necessity to get on private groups on Facebook. But you do, in my opinion, should have a right to speak your mind within reason of legal speech. I can't even believe I'm using that term in a rant about freedom, but legal speech on social media without being throttled, without being censored, and without being shadow banned. I think the major tech platforms, as common carriers, just as your cell phone company, just as your internet company, you don't get throttled for the content of your speech. You go over your data, you might get throttled for that, but you're not getting throttled for the content of what you're saying into your cell phone by your cell phone company. But here we are. And it all starts with the credit card companies, and really, I wish the credit card companies had were a bigger target of the conversation about free speech and overreach. Why am I talking about all this? Well, that's a good question, and I'm sorry I kind of rambled and ranted there for a while. Let me go ahead and bring up a document, a legal document out of the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in Texas. We have a pretty crazy court decision that happened in the last week, yesterday, in fact. And I think it's an interesting conversation amidst all the Section 230 conversation and the idea of internet censorship and lawsuit protection of online forum moderators, etc. Because here we have a situation in which, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, had appealed to hold big tech platforms responsible for the censorship, for specifically political discrimination in their censorship. So, I want you to read a little bit of this here. So, there's a little summary here at the beginning. A Texas statute named House Bill 20 generally prohibits large social media platforms from censoring speech based on the viewpoint of its speaker. The platforms urge us to hold that the statute is factually unconstitutional and cannot be applied to anyone at any time under any circumstances. And then there's some other, they kind of talk about some of the arguments here, but I want you to read the last sentence here. Today, we reject the idea that corporations have a free-willing First Amendment right to censor what people say. Because the district court held otherwise, we reverse its injunction and remand for further proceedings. Wow. Wow. That's spicy. Let me see here. Yeah, okay, so those are the important parts of the summary. Let's see. I did see a little snippet clear down here in page 90. This is a 113-page document, and I'm sure if I had the time to do a deep dive, there are some people out there who've had time to do a deep dive, and I haven't been following all of their coverage, but there's some spicy stuff down here on page 90. Wow, my phone. I need to just start silencing my phone before I start going live. I can't even tell what's what there. Okay, so down here on page 90, the First Amendment protects speech. It generally protects the government from interfering with people's speech or forcing them to speak. The platforms argue that because they host and transmit speech, the First Amendment also gives them an unqualified license to invalidate laws that hinder them from censoring speech they don't like, and they say that the license entitles them to pre-enforcement facial relief against HB 20. We reject the platform's attempt to extract a freewheeling censorship right from the Constitution's free speech guarantee. Woo! Oh, that is spicy. I love it. The platforms are not newspapers. Their censorship is not speech. They are not entitled to pre-enforcement facial relief, and HB 20 is constitutional because it neither compels nor obstruct the platform's own speech in any way. You hear that, Facebook? You hear that, YouTube? Twitter? All of y'all. All of social media. All the big tech. You have a giant platform. You could put your own videos. You could put your own speech. And government can't compel you to say things behind your own brand name. Government can't compel you to censor yourself. You have a big platform. You can say whatever you want. But when I'm on your platform, that's not you speaking. That's me speaking. The district court erred in concluding otherwise and abused its discretion by issuing a preliminary injunction. That preliminary injunction is vacated, and this case is remanded for further proceedings consistent with this opinion. Boom! You tried to sue, or you tried to ask for preliminary relief, and you got smacked down. Well, first you won, but now it's in appeals, and the appeals court kicked it back and said, no, you can't do this. The district court cannot do this. You can't give relief in advance for a law you don't want to follow. So now it's going to go back to the district court, and they're going to have to issue a new ruling consistent with the idea that big corporations don't have a First Amendment right to speak on your behalf, to censor on your behalf. So, on Constitution Day, we've now learned that the freedom of speech is not the freedom to silence someone else. That big tech has created giant infrastructure with their own money. It's their property. But they did it with the idea that people would use it as a service to exchange ideas amongst themselves. They wouldn't have a business model if it weren't for our speech. If it weren't for our ideas. They wouldn't have content. Their content is our ideas. Their content is our speech. We are their product. That's why it's a free service. They say, there's a saying, nothing in life is for free. If you're getting something for free, then you're the product. And as such, our content has nothing to do with their free speech. I may have a difference of opinion on some smaller websites, but even those, I think if you're a carrier, you're a carrier. If your content is to allow other people on your content or host content on your platform, I think you have a requirement to moderate. I think you have to understand when illegal activity is happening on your platform. I don't think you should just leave the pool without a lifeguard, so to speak. But that doesn't mean the lifeguard just gets to kick anyone out of the pool for any reason. And so, here we are. We have a major, and that was a federal appeals court. It was based off of a Texas law. I'm pretty sure that was a federal appeals court. Oh man, did I close it? I think, no, here it is. Yeah, United States Court of Appeals for Fifth Circuit. It was a Texas law, but they tried to use the U.S. Constitution to squash it. But it's given us a blueprint because now other states could say, hey, well, first of all, it pressures social media to now say, well, if I got to make exceptions for Texas, I might as well just make it my new policy. I'm not sure that's going to happen across the board, but it would be interesting if this ruling out of Texas, based on a Texas law, applied to everyone else in the United States. If they were to stop throttling us or stop censoring us based on political beliefs. Granted, you're still going to have YouTube and Facebook and Twitter talk about disinformation or medical or legal advice. They're still going to have other reasons to censor you. Don't accept this as the big, we're never going to get censored again. No, you're still going to get censored. You're still going to get banned. And it's still probably going to mostly happen to people who are small government or conservative or conspiracy theorist. It's still going to happen to it's not going to happen to people who agree with the narrative. So again, you're not going just because you're not getting censored for your political beliefs necessarily, you're still going to get censored for the media narrative calling you disinformation. You're still going to get censored for the media narrative saying that what you're saying is legal advice or medical advice. And again, none of this is legal advice, by the way. Let me throw that out there too. I'm not telling anyone that they should file lawsuits or do anything of the sort. And any time that I may have said something similar to that before, I want to make it clear I was talking about hopes that people would sue, not giving people saying that, they had a legal justification to sue necessarily. So just want to throw that out there. I don't give legal advice. I don't give medical advice. I don't give advice on political alignment. Because let me just say, I don't really align with anything necessarily political. I'm an individualist. So, we are 43 minutes into the stream. And I haven't even begun to talk about the biggest news story of the week. Oh, excuse me. And that's undocumented immigration. Our media is trying their damnedest to twist a narrative away from the most obvious hypocrisy that I have seen on a national media stage yet. The idea that it's okay to have, and for the sake of argument, we'll use your word, refugees, to have tens of thousands of refugees pouring across the southern border every single week, and for them to be bussed and shipped to various communities around the country, for them to be put on buses and drove to Central Texas, for them to be put on an airplane in the middle of the night and taken to Florida, which some people are saying that didn't happen, but I don't know. I mean, you look up the evidence yourself. Google it, Twitter it, do a search on Twitter for it. Make up your own mind. I think there's some evidence to say it may or may not have happened. But we do have a border crisis. We do have several, for lack of a better term, refugees entering this country in hopes to make a better life for themselves, or worse life for themselves in some cases, because there are some unsavory people amongst the refugees. The idea that every community should be open and welcoming to it except for your community. The idea that you can pass sanctuary city laws in super left-wing havens around the country. I'm looking at you, California. I'm looking at you, Chicago, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts. Yet, when the state of Texas says, hey, we've got thousands upon thousands upon thousands, in our state government and our local governments cannot handle this refugee crisis alone. When they get shipped to the state of Florida, and Florida decides, we don't know why they're here, but we're going to spread some of the burden around to far left-wing havens, to sanctuary cities. Now all of a sudden it's a humanitarian crisis. It's not a humanitarian crisis for Texas to have to absorb 50,000 people in a week, new residents. That's not a humanitarian crisis. But 50 people being flown to Martha's Vineyard. You have the media erupt in outrage. You have locals calling it a humanitarian crisis. And those people were eventually turned away and sent elsewhere. Now, granted, the people of Martha's Vineyard claim that they fed and bedded those people for a day. But one day doesn't solve a humanitarian crisis. And as several conservative and middle-of-the-road journalists have pointed out, there are more than 50 rooms on Airbnb right now for Martha's Vineyard. The summer season is over. There's plenty of empty housing. The state of Texas is supposed to absorb 50,000 people a week. Martha's Vineyard, with all the empty housing, with all of the upper class and upper middle class wealthy people in Martha's Vineyard, couldn't do a charity dump to house these people for longer than one day. But there wasn't a problem a month ago when Texas says, hey, we have a crisis. There wasn't a problem a month ago when conservative media people and libertarian media people were at the border begging Kamala Harris to come see for herself the actual humanitarian crisis. It wasn't a problem when you were outraged that Border Patrol agents were chasing, again, refugees. I won't call them illegals. I'll call them refugees for you folks on the left. The humanitarian crisis wasn't a problem, but people chasing them down was a problem. People chasing them on horseback was a problem. But the thousands of people coming across the border and influxing into communities and putting stress on local governments, that wasn't a humanitarian crisis until the middle of September 2022, when now liberal cities, when Democrat-run strongholds, when the wealthy people of Martha's Vineyard now have to deal with being humanitarians, now have to deal with trying to look like empathetic, charitable people, while putting their money where their mouth is and actually trying to be empathetic, charitable people. Now it's a problem. So that's where we are in this country. Now, a lot of my libertarian friends believe in open borders. Are you going to help build immigrant communities in your neighborhood? Are you going to help house somebody who has just come across the border and has nothing to their name? Are you going to be the charitable one? I'm not saying I don't have empathy, and I'm not saying that I'm not going to speak from a hypocritical standpoint. I know I'm not empathetic or charitable enough for some of the positions I take. But I do believe in a secure border. And I believe charity happens through areas and through people who understand the field of charity that they're in. You know, for example, I know a lot of people who, when they're driving down the street and you pull up to a highway on-ramp and there's that guy standing there in the median, with the sign, I'm a vet, will work for food. And you see him there for months and months, knowing that we have right now a labor shortage in this country, knowing that he's collected enough money where he could go get a shower and a haircut and go apply for a job. But again, it's more of a mental health problem than a financing problem. And so I know that I have loved ones that will pull up to that intersection and hand $5, $10 out the window. I know that my $5 or $10 isn't going to make or break that person's day. I know that the reason they're standing there doesn't have a whole lot to do with money. It more has to do with their mental state and any addictions they may have. And I'm empathetic and I'm sympathetic, but at the same time, I believe there are a lot of good people in this country, social workers, charity workers, people who run the shelters, people who run non-for-profit healthcare facilities. I think there are good ways to donate to those causes. I think there are good community organizations that you can donate to instead of giving $10 out the window to a guy who's probably about to buy a large bottle of vodka and then harass people for the rest of the day. And that doesn't mean I'm not empathetic toward his plight. But we're at a struggling point in this country where resources don't buy what they used to buy, and where empathy doesn't cover the needs of a community like it used to. So while you're sitting in your mansion on the coast at sea level and preach to us that the oceans are going to rise and therefore we need to be curbing our energy use, how empathetic you are for Mother Earth. But when you have a human being dropped off, and don't get me wrong, the homeless problem versus the immigration problem, those are two separate things. But when you have a human being dropped off in your community, and you're concerned, you're angry, you feel like someone has wronged your community by putting them there, you have two options. You can get mad, you can get butthurt, or you can go volunteer with a local organization or provide them with a big enough donation where they could fix the problem. They could hire people to help take care of the influx of people, and they could have social workers there who could direct them to the resources that they need to get on their feet, get a minimum amount of documentation, and try to find some way to get a job after they've applied for documentation, after they've applied for refugee status. You know, that's just it. We're a melting pot. I don't believe in just saying no. We don't want your kind around here. I'm not xenophobic like that. But we are in a situation where our limited resources, and again, hey, if you want my opinion, stop giving money, throwing billions of dollars to send weapons to Ukraine. And then, if we weren't doing that, if we weren't fighting wars, we weren't bailing out banks, maybe we'd have a little more money to spread some welfare around this country. Maybe we could absorb more foreign nationals and refugees to have a better life in our free nation. So yeah, I'm empathetic. I want to do the right thing, and yeah, I have a bleeding heart too. I'd open the door for genuine refugees and try to help them find a path forward in our free country. But first, first, you got to stop being butthurt. If you're on the left, put your money where your mouth is. Huh. Weird. I don't know if I'm still live on YouTube or not right now. Okay, it shows that I'm still live. Okay, that's weird. My view counter stopped at exactly 1 hour. So, all right. I've been doing this for an hour. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Oh, one topic I did not cover. It's Constitution Day. So I've been ranting about the Constitution, ranting about political issues. It's Batman Day, y'all. I don't know if my local comic shop is doing anything for Batman Day. I don't know if they're having any sales. I don't know if they're having any guests. I doubt it. But I'm curious. I may go check something out here. I've tried to research some of it on the Facebook, but comic shops aren't good at updating their social media. So, I might try to finally knock out some of the comics I've been meaning to read. I have not had much of a chance to read the last couple of weeks. I've been super busy at work, super busy at home. So a little program note, I may do a couple of extra streams next week. Not this upcoming week, but the week after, the week of the 26th. I will be having some extra time. And so hopefully I'm going to be spending some of that extra time reading a couple of extra comic books and watching a couple of extra movies or television shows. And as such, you know me, when I consume some media, I like to review it. I like to let y'all know what I think. Because if someone out there thinks, like me or is entertained by me, maybe you'll be entertained by some of the same stuff I am. So yeah, I may try to do a couple of extra streams that week. No promises. It may not happen, but I'm definitely going to try to, because I'm going to have a lot of extra time on my hands. Not only career-wise, but also personal life-wise. I'm going to have a lot of free time to catch up on some of the things I've had to do in my life, and hopefully that will then free some time up for me to consume media and vomit it back out to you. So anyway, I've went way over what I've planned to do. Happy birthday, Batman. Happy birthday, United States Constitution. And yeah, happy birthday if this is your birthday too. I know there are a couple celebrities who have birthdays today. So, yeah, happy birthday to everybody who has a birthday today or this week. And thank you for coming by. Do the big five. Leave a comment below. Come back for the chat. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit the subscribe button to catch my future videos. And if just having it on your list isn't enough, there's a little notification bell there where if you have a YouTube app on your smart device, clicking that little bell for notifications might give you a little heads up that I'm starting a live stream, so you can be here for the next chat. And then lastly, if you know somebody who likes the United States Constitution, who likes free speech, who likes Batman comics, all the above, who likes hearing people rant about movies and television shows and government, please share this with them. Send them a text, send it to them on Facebook or Twitter, and sharing this video off platform really helps get new eyes into this platform and helps YouTube realize that my channel might be something that could be worth promoting. And so I would really appreciate it if you could do those really 6 things. And I'll catch you next time, probably Tuesday evening. Not sure what that show is going to be about just yet, but hey, I wasn't sure what this show was going to be about until I sat down here a couple hours before showtime. I appreciate you spending the time with me, and I'll catch you then. Peace, love, and happy Constitution Day, everybody. Bye.